Welcome to Whisky.com, where fine spirits meet. My name is Luening, Horst Luening. I'm the master taster of Whisky.com, and today we do not taste any whiskey. No, we're talking about whiskey without an age statement. It's called NAS, N-A-S, no age statement whiskey. You won't find this NAS on a label, but it's the typical abbreviation for this unaged whiskey. No, unaged whiskey is a young whiskey for a younger whiskey without an age statement. Do those bottlers or companies have something to hide that they do not write the age on the bottles? There had been times where whiskey with age statements of 5 and 7 years. I remember a Macallan with a 7-year age statement and a Bowmore with 8 years old, and there had been a Talisker with 8 years. But people began to start to look after those numbers. On the continent in Europe, it was typical to sell whiskies with an age statement of 12 years. And in the United Kingdom, typically 10 years were the state of the art. And more and more people switched over to the more matured whiskies. Yes, wealth in the society grew and they were able to afford more aged whiskey. We are often asked, or I'm often asked, how old is this whiskey in this Auchentoshan 3-wood? You have connections to the distilleries. Ask them how old this whiskey is. And all I am able to answer is, I don't know. And the distillery itself does not know, because there is a mixture of several casks in a batch to produce this bottle. And typically the numbers of bottles from those batches differ from several thousand to several tens of thousands. And one batch has a mixture with the youngest cask in it of, say, 5 years, and the next mixture has a slightly older whiskey in it, 7 years. So one would have been 5 years old and the other 7 years old, even when 70% of the whiskey was 14 years old. And then people say, well, can't you write the amounts of the different aged whiskies on this bottle? Well, there's the Scotch Whisky Association, the industry body of the Scotch whisky industry, which represents, I think, 98% of the output of all Scottish distillers. So they cover all the huge, big mega corporations producing whiskey. And they said they lobbied to the parliament and said, well, we would like to have a single age written on the bottle or nothing. And if you write nothing on the bottle, the whiskey has to have at least 3 years and a day old, to be 3 years and a day old. And it isn't allowed to give percentages of aged whiskies on those bottles. So that's it. So you can't really tell how old the whiskey is. You can have a feeling. If you find these metallic youth, then the whiskey should be less than 6, 7 years. The majority of the whiskey in that bottle should have been younger than 6 or 7 years. But this is a guess. You can't tell really. All you can say, if there's no age statement on it, it's at least 3 years old. It's the law. In the US, it's 2 years, and in Canada, it's 3 years. And in the complete European community, it's also 3 years. Well, this Auchentoshan 3-wood is for a decade on the market, even longer, 2 decades. And the specialty of this whiskey is it's matured in 3 different casks, or a mixture of 3 different casks matured whiskey. I'm not quite sure. I tasted it already, I think. And so they sell with a unique selling proposition. We have 3 different casks and that's it. So they do not have to praise an age statement on the bottle. This Talisker 57 degrees north it's a high-strength whiskey, and they can say, well, it's high strength. And people look at the 57, okay, a number is on the bottle, it's okay. They do not have to write an age statement on it either. If you omit the age statement, then you're able to add a few younger casks. This will on the first hand, save stocks for future bottlings of aged whiskey, and it will bring more power into the whiskey. And this is a modern hype. The more intense a single malt whiskey is, the better it is. Well, sometimes it's too sharp, too young, but if you add a few younger casks and push the whiskey into more intensity, I think I took a video about how to intensify a single malt whiskey in the production process. And you can, on the one side, save older casks, and on the other side you can hide younger casks into those old and matured casks. Well, in the moment there's a big discussion in Europe because the Glenlivet, 12 years old, is stopped. It's the most often sold single malt whiskey in the US. If I remember right, it was a few years ago. I don't know if they still have the lead position. The Dewar's White Label is the most often sold Scotch whiskey on the US market, or it has been. And the Glenlivet is the most often sold single malt whiskey on the US market. And now there are mails from abroad asking us, you can't stop, or what do you say about stopping the Glenlivet 12 years old? And well, there is I think, it's my personal belief, that there is a shortage of matured single malt whiskey at the Glenlivet distillery, and they say, well, we have to satisfy our biggest market in the US, so we deliver everything we have of the 12-year-old in the US, and the rest of the market, well, they have to be satisfied with an unaged, or with a whiskey without an age statement on it. It's called the Founder's Reserve, and it will be in early 2015 on the market here in Europe. There had been a big case also with the Cardew. The Cardew, 12 years old, was so favorite in the markets in Europe, especially in the southern states of Europe, that stocks ran empty, ran low, and then they said, well, we rename the distillery Cardew to the old name Cardau, and we establish a new blended malt whiskey called Cardew, 12 years old, and we put Cardew whiskey in it, as well as whiskies from other distilleries, like I think it was Dalwayne. And if you change the distillation process accordingly, then the output of Dalwayne will perfectly match Cardew. And then they brought out this blended malt. It was called pure malt then. It was 2004, 2005, and it was a scandal, a huge scandal, and they had to take it back, stop the production, and I tasted the pure malt, and it was wonderful. It was better than the original 12-year-old. But, well, quality didn't matter. Purity is what counts in such a product. Well, then the crisis, the financial crisis came, and the demand from the southern states, especially Spain and Italy, went down. And so the demand could be satisfied by Cardew, but sales rose again over the years, and today they seem to be short as well. And they established the Amber Rock, I tasted that already, and the Gold Reserve, both Cardews without an age statement on it, specially selected casks, of course. So this was a way to work around those shortages in supply. Macallan, huge scandal as well. No scandal, but people were upset because they stopped selling whiskies with an age statement below 18 years. So the 12-year-old sherry cask was gone, 15 years gone, 10 years gone, and they substituted them with the Macallan Gold, Amber, Sienna and Ruby, and I think I tasted a few of them already. This was strange, even for me. I couldn't believe that they stopped this cornerstone of the Scottish malt whisky industry, the 12-year-old, from the sherry casks. Wow, unbelievable. But they changed for better. They reactivated their old still house, where I think there are 4 stills in it. They activated it in 2008. So supplies should be better in the upcoming years. Then the Singleton of Dufftown, there's a 12-year-old on the market, but also a Sunray, a Spey Cascade. I think I tasted some of them also. Tasted so many, I'm not quite sure if I had them. Yeah. Organic growth of sales in the established market were high, and Asia was growing as well. And then shortages came, and from this reason they had to switch over to younger whiskies, even single casks, which they put into the mixture, or even substitute huge amounts from the whiskey. The marketing very seldom looks after stocks in the warehouses. It's an oligopoly of 8 or 9 mega corporations, global mega corporations, and nearly all of them start to omit the age, which is very sad. They are looking for a fast turnover, a less capital expenditure. Of course, if you sell the whiskey after 5 years, your capital expenditure is half as high as if you sell it after 10 years. And do not forget the angel share. And you're able to react faster on the market. If they say, oh, sherry casks are no longer that hip, we switch over to herring casks, for example, then you can switch over in a few years, 3 years, 5 years. Coca-Cola casks. It's not very expensive to mature whiskey. So a 10-year-old typically costs about $30, $40, and a 20-year-old, well, $150. So prices go up with age, and people say, well, it's so expensive to mature them. No. For a bottle, for the content of a bottle, maturation for a year is around 2 to 3 cents. That's all. If you mature for 10 years, you add 20 to 30 cents to a whiskey. Interest rates are low, very low. Insurance isn't that expensive. They switched the whiskey distillation industry into chemical plants. So the regulation, the red tape work is there for chemical plants, and everywhere there's fire equipment and so on. There had never been a fire for long, in Kilchoman. But the big distilleries, no fire for decades. The last one, I think, was Talisker in '66. So insurance is quite low. What the mega corporations try to avoid are those step costs that do not go constantly with growing sales, but which step up, keep constant, and step up again if you increase production further. If you have to build a new warehouse, very fast, you're spending $1 million. New stills, a new still house, very expensive. All those machines in it, and if you add stills, well, you have to add a bigger mash tun. And you have to have additional washbacks. You have to double all of them. So huge new buildings. And then you have to wait for 12 years until the whiskey is mature. So those step costs, they try to avoid it. All those controllers say, 10 years, uncertainty, we don't know. Bad corporations, in a whole, I do not tell names, do nothing. They are just saving money by faster turnover, less expenditure, and they increased the spending for marketing. That's the reason why I always look on those bottles and say, well, marketing blur. That's not true. So they increased the spending for marketing. They put whiskey into space and whatever. This will work more or less, but not on the long run. That's the problem. You can fool the market for a few years, but not for decades. Macallan started a new distillery. They spent £100 million for a new distillery. And they started with the works already. And they had built new warehouses up front. Yeah, where to put the new whiskey in. Sorry. Glenlivet, they built a new still house. Very huge, wonderful glass front. It's extremely well done. And they grew to 14 stills and they tripled capacity. And they put that warehouse into still house into production in 2010. So whiskey will be flowing fast. And this will be the reason, after 5 years of production, perhaps they can start with a Founder's Reserve here on the continent and switch over the 12-year-old into the US. Diageo, they started to invest $1 billion. Diageo is the biggest malt whiskey distilling company in Scotland and the biggest alcoholic beverage company in the world. And they have Lagavulin, Talisker, Cardew, Singleton, Knockandoo. They own everything. No, not everything, but they have a huge market share. They started to invest £1 billion into increasing production in Scotland. They spent approximately, I think it was a quarter, and then they withdrew. They said, stop. No. It was late 2014 when they said stop. What happened? Well, the anti-corruption corruption law in China showed effects. So demand from China dropped by, I think, 30%. And this was quite, it showed there's something going on. And the first time over, I think, 5 or 7 years, the Scotch Whisky Association recorded a decline in sales, in exports worldwide. The first time in 6 or 7 years. I think in the financial crisis 2007, 2008, it dropped also. But from then on until now, 2013, everything went up. And the figures for 2014, I think they showed a small decline. But beware of the turning point. So people extremely, the head of production and marketing and controlling and so on, I think they became fear and they stopped this expansion. Yeah, very sad. Distilleries like Lagavulin or Ardbeg, nothing. Here, to increase the production is very expensive. And on this remote island and around those picturesque distilleries, there's a lot of wildlife and protected wildlife, and adding another still house and wash bags and mash tuns, it would be an extremely complicated and cost-driving task. So I'm afraid no increase in Lagavulin and Ardbeg, but increasing prices. Offering and demand will find a common sense in the price. And some corporations seem to earn enough money. Privately owned distilleries are better. They have a long foresight, like Glenfarclas. They take care of the future. And this Glenfarclas high proof 105, 60% ABV, they added an age statement on the back, 10 years old, several years ago. Then there were some bottles without an age statement on it, and then again, and I don't know, I think they, from time to time, they have enough matured whiskey to show the age statement, and from time to time not, that they omit the age statement. But I tasted both of them, and quality is very stable, and it does not depend whether there's an age statement on this bottle or not. So this is the good news. Young whiskey is not always bad, or whiskies without an age statement on it. And those privately owned distilleries, they are working in generations. And the mega corporations, well, the manager typically leaves half the time of the typical maturation period of a single malt whiskey. So a manager leaves at 5 years and the whiskey has to mature for 10. So why should that manager care about stocks? Why should they take care about the age of a whiskey? As long as marketing works, and if marketing does not work any longer, well, you increase spending in marketing. And when in the end nothing works, well, he leaves for the next company. Perhaps vodka. There is no maturation of vodka. You can react very fast to the market. You can add lime, cranberries, whatever, to your vodka to satisfy the hypes in the market. So whiskey is completely different. You have to take care about the whiskey, age it for decades, and in the end you have a perfect product. But you need some years to understand that. There's a ray of hope for the industry, and it comes from the newly built distilleries. There's roughly a dozen new distilleries built. The names are quite hidden in the market. You heard of Kilchoman? They are into production about 5-6 years, I think. Daft Mill, they're into production about 10 years, but they never sold a bottle. I think they wait until they have a definite age to write on the bottle. Sorry. Annandale, a classic, rebuilt, very old distillery. Kingsbarns in St. Andrews, or Wolfburn. Well, we will see. It depends on the capital those startup companies have. I calculated it a few years ago, and if you have existing buildings and a well on your property, then you might be able to start production with 3 million. But better are 5 or 10. So it takes quite a while until you're on the market, and if those small companies have the capital, then we will be fine. Sorry. And the other ray of hope is whiskey might be very good if it's young. So, but give all those distillery a chance, which you do not know already, like Ben Romach, 10-year-old, 12-year-old, wonderful whiskey, and aged. Well, thank you very much for watching. There's more to come, and feel free to share this video with your friends.